Welcome into PFF HQ. Austin Gayle here with senior analyst Steve Palazzolo, continuing our State of the Franchise series with the Miami Dolphins, a franchise in rebuild mode. Admittedly, they traded for Josh Rosen. They hope they can find something good from him there after a rough year in Arizona with a bad supporting cast. I want to ask you, what does an ideal season look like for Josh Rosen and the Miami Dolphins?
Well, I think it's just seeing that growth from Rosen. Last year, I don't dock him too much for what happened in Arizona. He was one of our worst quarterbacks from a grading standpoint, one of the worst statistically, but the situation was terrible in Arizona from an offensive line and offensive playmaker situation. I don't think he's changed much from UCLA. So I think the ideal situation is seeing the guy that made big-time throws at UCLA, made NFL-type throws at the intermediate level, and just, good decision-making, something that, he forces the ball a little bit too much. Can you get a guy that's just going to work within the system a little bit better than we saw at Arizona, even that we saw at times at UCLA. So a step forward from Josh Rosen, even if the situation around him is not that great.
And outside of Josh Rosen, this supporting cast, similar to Arizona, is very bad. It doesn't have, there's not a lot of talent along the offensive line. He doesn't have pass catchers. And I've asked you this question before. With PFF, we're able to isolate quarterback play so much better than maybe box score stats can. He's in another bad situation. There's going to be media and fans alike saying it's hard to assess. He doesn't have the right supporting cast. He's got no one to throw to. With PFF grades in mind and his UCLA background, you can assess Josh Rosen in this Miami Dolphins team, right?
No, I think you can, and I do think his playmakers are a little bit better than what we saw at Arizona. Devontae Parker, I still like Devontae Parker. They picked up that fifth-year option to give him that one last shot in the new scheme. Kenny Stills, they're a guy that could still stretch the field a little bit. They've invested a ton at the tight end position. Mike Gesicki, an athletic freak that they can take advantage of there. So I do think he has some guys to play with. The offensive line is not great. It is one of the worst in the NFL. So I think that's going to be the big thing. How well does he play? How well does he handle pressure? Can he get the ball a little bit quicker to mitigate some of the offensive line? And I do think you can get a better assessment of Rosen because we do a good job of isolating things even when the situation is poor.
Let's talk some positives. Defensively, there maybe are one or two young pieces that they can maybe potentially build around in the future. They drafted Christian Wilkins high in this year, and then last year they saw great play from Minkah Fitzpatrick in the slot. Those are positives, right? Those are guys that maybe they can build around. Even if Josh Rosen doesn't pan out, that maybe with the next quarterback they bring in, this Dolphins team could start to get that rebuild going with those defensive stars.
Absolutely. Fitzpatrick, a guy that's very versatile on the back end, just has to cut down on his missed tackles. Christian Wilkins, I didn't love him at as high as he went in the draft, but just solid overall. Very good run defender, can get after the quarterback a little bit. Plus they got Sabian Howard back there. He's got some poor plays on tape as well, but just some freakish plays too, where he looks like Richard Sherman and can make plays on the ball. So there is some good young talents. They just don't have the depth. You're not looking at that defensive line saying, wow, they're scary, or that secondary and saying that they're scary either. So I think it's rebuild mode. Those are the young players. You're building around them. You just want to continue to see those guys step forward. And then the Dolphins did a pretty good job in the draft to kind of push some of their draft picks into the future. So I think that's what Miami fans are looking for, is just continued growth from the young players and knowing that it might take 2 or 3 years to really get the talent back on this roster.
There are some positives with this Miami Dolphins team. It's that young defensive core. It's Minkah Fitzpatrick, Sabian Howard moving forward. For more content like this, go ahead and subscribe to Pro Football Focus's YouTube channel, or better yet, go to the site at pff.com.